We're living in a world where quarterly reports, where performance, results seem to be the main mantra of today, which are all important themes, obviously, for leadership. But a vision usually has to do with the longer term. And we've kind of seemed to have lost that. Sometimes I say vision has a bit of an image problem. People sometimes even make mockery out of it, as if it's an idealistic fantasy. We don't have time for that. We don't have time to put our feet on the table. That's a shame, because we do know that powerful visions are really helpful, or one of the most helpful tools that distinguish a manager and a leader. But it does require us to take a long-term perspective, and that's one of the reasons, I would imagine. So it's a bit of a sign of time, perhaps, and hopefully that there's going to be a rebound as we're going to be looking more forward. The second argument there would probably be it's also not very easy to develop a compelling vision. It's easy to criticize others for not having one, but if we look at ourselves, it requires things like imagination, it requires things like inspiration, tapping into people's emotional side and developing something that inspires. And that's just a hard thing to do. It's a practice. You can work on it, obviously, but it's not something that comes natural. Now, so on the one hand, we've got people that seem to have lost the idea that it is important because we're focusing on the short term. On the other hand, it's damn hard, let's be honest. I think those two coming together makes it really hard for people to make this work.
I've had interviews with the North American head of Lego Systems, and I've interviewed the former CEO of IKEA. And I'm struck by, in both of those cases, you have a primarily family-owned operation, but their horizons for business planning and for vision are so much longer than almost any business here, for instance, in the United States or in North America. They have the 15-year plan, they have the 20-year plan, and their just eyes are way, way out there. How much of that do you think is because they are such closely held companies, and how much of that is, it might even be a second part to that question, how much of it do you think is just cultural?
Well, it's culturally attached to a family business in that sense. We know, a lot of the public businesses, they operate under a market mantra, and that's a different sense, that's a different sky. Family businesses typically have evolved over decades. Very often what you hear family business say, that they live by the idea that they're borrowing the company from their children. So they imagine going to work every day with that mindset. That obviously gets you to cast your mind forward. What am I going to leave behind for my children? Whereas in businesses, the term for a CEO, a couple of years, if he's lucky, a couple of bad quarters, he's out. Yeah. So obviously that sets a very different tone, and that's part of what we've evolved into. And vision, I think, is part of an element that suffers from that. In theory, we all acknowledge it's really important. I can list you millions of quotes of people that said vision is the core of leadership, but in practice we struggle.